Canny, and to all of you for your opening statements. We will now proceed to questions from the committee. I'd like to begin by asking Mr. Canny for some help. I think there's often confusion among the various ways individuals fleeing persecution can enter the United States. Oftentimes, refugees and asylum seekers are conflated. Now, many times it's unintentional. Sometimes it's very intentional. In addition, with the recent surge in Afghan and Ukrainian arrivals through the parole process, the different pathways into the United States has gotten even more complex. One thing is clear, though. These are all lawful and unique pathways for individuals and families to come to the United States and seek safety. So, Mr. Canny, can you spend a minute just explaining the differences between asylum, refugees, and parolees so we can ensure that the focus of this hearing remains, as I mentioned at the outset, on the refugee process specifically?
So a refugee, in the context of this program, is generally referred to the United States by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee. They've been determined to have refugee status by the UN, but they go through a process outside of the country, and they're often in either refugee camps or other parts of cities outside of the country, a process of vetting, process of determining if they meet the criteria, are they a threat, et cetera, and through that process are admitted or rejected to the program. An asylum seeker comes into the country and at that point makes a case for their own persecution, which is similar to a refugee, but a case for their own persecution or the possibility of persecution before courts while they were in the country. A parolee, oftentimes referred to as a humanitarian parolee, comes on a parolee visa. They are allowed in for humanitarian purposes, also for perhaps the good of the United States as it may be determined. And they come in and they are allowed in for a short period of time, usually in these recent instances, 2 years, perhaps one, and they are here for a short period of time with no guarantee of a path towards residency in the United States. So those are the three distinctions.
Thank you. Very helpful and useful here. So how is the program going? I think we've laid out some history through our opening statements. The U.S. Refugee Admissions Program has, on average, admitted 80,000 annually since 1980. And it has only been since 2017 that the number has dropped significantly. The Trump administration's severe cuts to the number of refugees admitted into the U.S., even though the program had enjoyed robust bipartisan support for nearly 4 decades, and despite the fact that through this program, refugees can enter the United States with arguably the most significant vetting process in place. Then COVID-19 dramatically limited the ability of refugees to be processed as USCIS officers could not go abroad to interview them. So COVID offered additional challenges. While the Biden administration has set the refugee ceiling number at 62,500 for fiscal year 2021 and 125,000 for fiscal year 2022, only 11,411 and 25,465 were admitted in those years respectively, creating this significant gap between the cap and the actual number admitted, again, as the chart behind me demonstrates. So, question for Mr. Canny, can you discuss what challenges the Biden administration has faced in rebuilding the refugee program and what actions the administration can take to resettle closer to that 125,000 number of refugees by the end of fiscal year 2024?
The challenges have been many, but they've been primarily, I would say, staffing particularly with DHS, USCIS, refugee officers who, by the way, are well-trained once they are hired and trained to go out and do the work. They have not had enough, due to staffing primarily, circuit rides to go out and adjudicate refugees. They've been slow to restaff refugee processing centers, the 7 that we have overseas, to get them again staffed up to adjudicate the numbers of refugees that we would like to get into this process. They've also been, I would say, distracted for good purposes with the Afghan evacuation, and the system was forced to focus on the 80,000 Afghans that came in. I'm proud to say that our government and our communities and the nonprofits that worked in that did a fantastic job. That was, at sort of the expense to a degree of getting other refugees into the country through the pipeline to reach the 125,000 that you mentioned. I think the security vetting that they've inherited from the Trump administration and previously, I think needs to be looked at again. My concern, and I'm not an expert, but that some of the vetting that was put into place by the last administration may not be as meaningful as it should be. It could also have some processes that are duplicative. I think we need to look at those processes of duplication also in order to get this pipeline moving in the pace that we need to complete 125,000 by 2024.
Thank you very much. Senator Cornyn.